Hello everyone. This is about what we are doing in Mazingira House. It is very much focusing on livestock production and environment. What is our research focus? We are looking into the environmental footprint of livestock production. So, as background information, we should be aware that agricultural food and feed production is responsible for approximately 30% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, if we account for emissions coming from land use change as well. Livestock production itself accounts for approximately 12 to 40% of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, mainly via ruminant methane emissions, but also due to N2O methane emissions from manure and manure management activities. And livestock is a major driver of land use change, which itself contributes approximately 15% to anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. We should also be aware that livestock production has other negative environmental effects. It does lead to the degradation of soil carbon stocks and loss of soil fertility in cases of overgrazing. It also affects water quality and quantity. And finally, it also has a huge impact on biodiversity. However, there's also positive sides, of course, about livestock. Livestock is a major asset for smallholders. Livestock allows to effectively make use of land unsuitable for cropping. What is unique about our work? Mazingira House is the only facility in entire sub-Saharan Africa which allows for measuring livestock systems' greenhouse gas emissions. And we are the only one who can provide integrated emission estimates. You should be aware that so far there are no measurements of ruminant methane emissions available for Africa. What does this mean? Now, all measurements have been done so far in OECD states. And what we found there is a strong and linear relationship between intake and digestibility and enteric methane production, as shown on the right hand. However, no one so far has looked into methane emissions for livestock fed at sub-maintenance level, but that is what happens a lot in Africa. You see the graph now at the bottom, and that shows you the loss in live weight for a plot in the Sahel zone over an entire year. And most of the times, livestock is at sub-maintenance, and that's the reason why it loses livestock. If we now conclude on this one, we can't find data for such situations in the current measurements in OECD states, because such measurements have never been done. So we don't know if these relationships shown in the graph between apparent digestibility and methane production indeed holds as well for Africa. Also, just consider that environment conditions with regard to temperature and diets being available differ much between OECD states and the situation in sub-Saharan Africa. What we have to state now is that we have a lack of knowledge on ruminant methane emissions in sub-Saharan Africa, and for that reason we have a huge uncertainty on existing greenhouse gas inventories, with livestock being one of the major emission sources for greenhouse gases in all countries in Africa. As I said, there is no measurements of ruminant methane emissions. We have very limited information about greenhouse gas emissions from manure management and cropping systems or due to land use change. And all current estimates for sub-Saharan Africa are based on measurements in OECD states. So what do we want to do? Mazingira House team aims to develop livestock system-specific emission factors for different feeding situations, different breeds, and we want to understand how we possibly can develop feasible mitigation strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from livestock production in sub-Saharan Africa. Where do we see opportunities for collaboration? There are a few ones. What we still need, and where we are struggling with, is obtaining detailed information on feeding systems, feed intake, quantities, and feed quality. We also would like to have more detailed information on herd management, herd health, and livestock productivity, which includes weight gains or losses across the season or milk production. We also want to understand the smallholder motivation towards improved management practices, and we want to look into options for improving the feed basis, which are really feasible and can be implemented at small farms with the smallholders. And we would like to link agro-industrial operations, and specifically the residues produced there, and to explore if they can be used as supplements for feeding. And sure, finally, things will only happen if there is an economic win. So we need to have an economic assessment of feasible practice changes. Thank you very much for your attention.